Well, with more on this case, we're now joined by Matthew Leffler, professor of law at Michigan State University. He also hosts his own podcast called the Armchair Attorney. Matthew Leffler, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Now, in a recent post, you described this case as, quote, the most important Supreme Court case in my lifetime. You know, Canadians certainly have a vested interest in its outcome. What makes it so important for you?
The questions that are being asked in the VOS elections case are fundamental to the American experience. We have a three-legged stool with the executive, the legislative, and the judicial. And in this case, we are testing the limits of whether or not Congress can delegate this incredible authority to use emergency powers to essentially declare a global trade war. It has never happened before, and we'll find out November 5th when the oral arguments take place which side the justices will go. But it is an incredibly important case. It has questions about the fundamental nature of our Constitution.
Fundamental natures of your Constitution, and to my understanding, the Constitution, as it reads, does put the power of tariffs in the hands of Congress. So if that is the purview of Congress, and here is the president challenging it, why do the legal observations going into this case seem to suggest this is not going to be a clear-cut argument?
This is an incredible moment in American history. What is at stake is this a law called IEPA, the International Emergency Economic Powers Act of 1977. In a nutshell, it allows the president to declare an emergency and do certain things in an emergency, but what those powers are unclear. Using tariffs under IEPA has never been done before, but in a very real sense, it is the ability to declare a global trade war without any advice or consent of Congress. The only way under IEPA to make this emergency go away is for the House and the Senate by a 2/3 majority of each to overturn that emergency power. You'll never see that happen in the United States, having 2/3 of both the House and the Senate agree to anything. And so this power the president is using is able to circumvent what Congress has done. So there's two questions in the VOS elections case. One is whether or not IEPA even allows the use of tariffs. The language of tariff is never in IEPA. But the second point, even more important, is can Congress even give up that power if they wanted to? And twice now, the Trump administration has lost at the Court of International Trade and again on appeal to the Federal Circuit. But now we have a date, November 5th, for the oral argument and probably a decision by the middle of next year. But this is an incredibly important case, and I've been screaming about this all across the country because we all need to understand what is happening with our system.
Okay, you have referenced two prior rulings on the tariffs and these trade policies. But I want to ask more specifically about the U.S. Supreme Court, because this is now where we find ourselves. And when you look at America's top court, it has actually sided with the president on a host of other matters: immigration, firing civil servants, restructuring the Department of Education. How do those recent rulings factor into this case, as a matter of jurisprudence, or if not as a matter of jurisprudence, even as a political backdrop?
The Roberts Court is among the most conservative we have seen in decades. And the question about how they will rule on this particular case with the other cases you've cited, this is an interesting question. I believe if they go just simply by party lines, maybe it's 6-3 or 5-4, the tariffs remain in place. But I do think there's a very interesting argument. I looked very carefully at the amicus brief filed by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce that kind of outlines their position as one of the most pro-business organizations in the United States. And they are attacking this thing directly. And so I think there is an avenue, I do, that it could possibly be that these tariffs are not going to be upheld and they're going to go away. The other part that I think the justices clearly know is that the administrations will change. And these powers, once given up, never go back. And they would be very careful to understand that if you govern by emergency, that means that any future president, day one of their administration, is to declare another emergency and create whatever policy they possibly want without any oversight by the American population or by Congress. So I am optimistic, cautiously optimistic, but your point is really well taken. It's very possible they simply follow the path of the administration. And if they do, Woe be to the American people. Woe be to the world. This is not the way the American democracy was set to be done. And that's why this case is so interesting, because it is clearly a vast grab of power by the executive branch that has never happened before.
And the potential to be even more polarizing in American society, correct?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I use the example. Imagine you like this outcome. Maybe you're a person in the United States. You're like, I like having these tariffs in place. But imagine your worst political enemy comes in place. Maybe someone comes in and says, oh, the climate change, that's a natural disaster. That's a disaster. That's an emergency. I'm going to put tariffs on anything that has to do with internal combustion engines. And you have no way to stop that. You cannot govern by emergencies. There is advice and consent that must happen. And so I'm very excited to see what happens with this case. And obviously, whether the outcome, whichever way it goes, hopefully there's some clarity as to what the emergency powers truly are and whether or not Congress can even delegate the tariffs like they did, or they're arguing that they did under this IEEPA litigation.
And of course, this goes right down to tariffs against Canada. So many Canadians are watching this very closely. Matthew Leffler, thank you for this. Really appreciate the time.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.